Hey, I'm ZSH Plays, welcome back to San Bernardino Zoo. Now what is this we're looking at? Well, let's find out. Back in our African area, we're going to be adding a giraffe and zebra habitat to our savannah. The walls are going to be the same as the rhino habitat, so let's get those in straight away and move on to something new, which is a fence. Now because we already built a savannah last week, we're going to be concentrating on two main aspects of this build today. Firstly, a giraffe feeding platform where the guests can go up and feed the giraffes. And secondly, the giraffes shelter, which is based on a real zoo building and one of the craziest zoo buildings I've ever seen. Cannot wait to get stuck into that. But before we do either of those things, we need to get a fence built that is suitable to keep giraffes. So this is fun because it's pretty much the only fence you're ever going to build that's going to be this tall and not have any sort of anti-climbing barrier or anything like that on it. So we're going to be building out of some pretty sturdy materials here because giraffes are fairly powerful. These iron bars, some big thick logs which are part of the jetty set in the habitat panel. There's some mesh at the bottom as well. And then we're going to use some little detailing pieces to really make it look like the metal poles are sunk into the big wooden posts. I've spoken about this before in Franchise Masters, but it's really useful to have custom tags like you can see here. So I've got one called Tiny where I can just straight away find all the smallest pieces in the game and find something that's going to fit here. This fits really nicely, this little cap piece, and joins the metal poles onto the wooden poles really nicely. And while I finish off the fence, I've got a few exciting announcements to make in this episode, and I'm going to start with the first one now. As this video goes live, there's going to be our first ever poll on the channel as well, where you guys can choose the final animal to go into the savannah. So in the rhino and springbok habitat that we built last week, we've actually got some space there, and I think we can get another animal in. So I prepared a short list of suitable species, and I'm going to put a poll up on the channel which you'll be able to vote on as soon as you finish watching this, where you can choose which one of those animals you want to go in there, and whichever animal gets the most votes will go into the habitat. So there's a few savannah animals that I haven't included for various reasons. The African elephants are not a choice because we are definitely having those in their own habitat. We can't just squeeze those in with some other animals. Obviously no carnivores, but this is the short list. We've got the aardvark, African buffalo, black wildebeest, blue wildebeest, ostrich, sable antelope, Thompson's gazelle, and the warthog. Let me know in the poll, and we will add them in the next episode. So the fences are in now. They're going to provide viewing on some of the paths that go past this habitat, like you can see here. And as the area grows, perhaps some of the other mud walls will be replaced with the fences as well, depending on what's going to look good. So with that done, let's move on to the first big job of this episode, which is to build a giraffe feeding platform. This is the path that we placed here for that purpose last week, so let's turn it into a feeding platform. The first thing we need to do is adjust these null barriers so that the platform isn't inside the habitat, because the giraffes and the zebras aren't walk-through animals, so because we're in franchise mode, the guests will run away screaming if they think they're in the same habitat as them. So we'll reconfigure those around there, and then we can start building it. So we'll use these logs with the concrete bases that we've used in various parts of this habitat for some continuity, and then we'll use these African wood pieces to make a floor. Now we want the floor to be bigger than the path here, because when guests are viewing habitat, sometimes they will step forward sort of past the end of the path, which is a bit annoying when you're building normal habitats, and really annoying if you're building a habitat with some stairs suspended in the air like this, because they're literally going to be floating and we don't want that. So we'll make sure that no matter where they stand, they're always going to be on something. We'll change this to a wooden stair so we get a less obvious border. We'll be covering that up with a brand new piece later on anyway, and then we'll get the supports down to a more sensible height using our angry vendor as a guide, and then we'll do some more detail work on the fences with the grassland pole. And one of my favourite pieces, the hinge, to secure the grassland pole, which is acting as wire into the wooden poles. There we go. We've got a couple of these in, and we'll use these all the way around this platform until it's complete. And then we're going to use the bark pieces to create the sides of the platform. Love using these pieces. Make sure we use all three of them. Loads of rotating when we copy them around to get a really natural look to it. And then it's on to our second announcement, which is that we just hit 5 million views on the channel, which is absolutely crazy. I cannot believe we've got 5 million views. So thank you all so much for watching and all your support over the past couple of years. It's been incredible watching this channel grow. That was a lovely little Christmas present. And speaking about Christmas, let's talk about our schedule over Christmas. I will be taking a Christmas break for about a week. So what that means in terms of the channel is that the next episode of San Bernardino Zoo and the final episode for 2023 will be on Saturday the 30th of December. But don't worry, because next week I've got a Christmas present for you. I had an idea a couple of days ago, which I'm really excited about. We're going to have a video and something else on the channel next Saturday, which I think you guys are really going to enjoy. I really hope that you find it useful. I'll give you a lot more details about that next Saturday when the video comes out. But yeah, keep your eyes on the channel for that. Back to this build, I'm trying to find a log to fit the top of the fences here. The one issue with the jetty poles that I've been using is they only come in one size, which is 6 meters long. So I went through every log in the game, and I think this thin one from the climbing panel is going to be the best fit. We're going to use the sunshade we built for the rhino habitats to use as a shade for the guests here. I think that fits really nicely. And then it's onto a brand new piece. This is one of the gift shop wallpapers from the new update, and it's completely flexicolor, and I thought it sort of brings to mind the pattern of a giraffe once we get the colors sorted. So we'll drop a few of these in, line them up properly, and then we'll start playing with the colors until we get something that brings to mind the giraffe. Always fun to get a new piece to play with, and I think this merges the steps into the fence that we're going to build on the side here really nicely. So we'll put that fence in, just rotating and copying one of the fences from the top. And that's the basics of the viewing platform done. Time to start detailing it. The most important thing you need on a feeding platform is food. So that's what we're going to do here. We'll get some buckets in, and we're going to fill them with some of the grasses in the game that are small enough to fit into the bucket. This red oak grass fits in really nicely. Took a while to find a plant that you could see but wouldn't sort of clip through the sides of the bucket, but I'm happy with this one. So we'll put it in there, and then we'll just clone it a few times so it looks more like a big sort of a bunch of foliage that's going to be fed to them. And then we'll pick a different plant and put it in this slightly smaller bucket and just get some variety in here. Looks like there's a couple of different things that we can feed them. Now obviously the guests aren't actually going to feed the giraffes in the game, there's no mechanism for that, but I really want something that looks like it would work. What we're going to do is use one of the animal talk points up here so that guests actually come up here and there's a member of staff with them supervising them, so it looks like they are about to start feeding the giraffes. We'll have a couple of those each year, and in terms of how long the guests spend up here, they're normally a few weeks early, so we've probably got a good maybe 3 months of the year where there will be guests up here on the giraffe feeding platform, which is really cool. Now let's use another one of the new pieces, the giraffe masks from the gift shop, to act as decoration at the bottom of this pole here, and then a sign reminding people that they can feed the giraffes but don't touch them. So we'll fix that onto this pole with some more hinges, and then it's time to move on to the giraffe house. And if you're going to build a house for an animal as unique as a giraffe, you need a really realistic scale model of a giraffe. So here it is. I think that does the job very nicely, thank you very much. So let's move on to actually building this thing. This is based on the Giraffe House at Rotterdam Zoo. It is one of those buildings that people either absolutely love or absolutely hate. I've seen it described as possibly the worst building in any zoo in the world. I definitely don't agree with that, but it is definitely unique. It kind of looks like some kind of crazy futuristic onion. It's entirely built out of recycled wood, and it is, by all accounts, a very successful giraffe house in terms of what the giraffes need. And we're basically going to be replicating that today. We're going to be using some of the Arctic wood pieces, which I really like. I hardly ever use these, but they're such a nice piece with that curve on them. And then we're going to match them with some other wood pieces using these particular ones, which are flexi-color, both in terms of the color of the wood and in terms of the color of the paint on them, which means you can really closely match the color of these other wooden pieces. This was quite the challenge to make, but I'm really happy with how it turns out in the end. We're not going to follow the original design exactly, we're going to use the pieces that I think will work best that we have in the game. So we're using these conservation 3D printed concrete pieces here, just rotating them to follow the grain of the wood on the Arctic piece behind it, so we get a nice seamless look on it, and just manually putting them into place. There's no quick way to do this, but we're just going to follow the grain of the wood and get the curve right, and then move them into place, and then onto the next one. These will go almost to the top of these giant wooden pieces, but then we've got these kind of spires sticking out. This is the building that you saw in the intro, of course. Once we get to the top, we will switch a few of these out. Almost there. We'll switch a few of these out for some windows, so we get some nice natural light into the building. Here's the first one. We'll just replace one of the conservation pack pieces with the window, and then we'll clone it and move it across here to start getting the front of the building done. And then what we need to do is use a rotation trick to create the curved sides of the building. We'll do a little bit more detail work first. I want another piece of wood at the top here, and you can see there's differing heights on each section of it as well to make it more interesting. And then we're going to drop in one of the African mud pillars so we can rotate this on its axis and get the sides of the building done. This building isn't a circle, it's more of an ellipse, I guess you would say. So what we need to do is use the rotation trick to create one circle at the end here. And then once we've got that done, we can copy that to the other side and put some straight bits in the middle to join it all up. So we're going to split the circle that we just created back into its component parts so that we can then take half of it here and move it over there. And then we'll take one of the straight pieces and copy this across the middle so that we can get the entrance in, and then we can just put this circular piece back. Although saying just put it back makes it sound a lot easier than it was, but eventually I got there, and we can move the building into position, get rid of the stuff in the middle, and that's the majority of the exterior done. Apart from the detailing, we'll just check with our very high-tech giraffe that the doors are going to work, and the giraffe says yes. Sadly, Planet Zoo said no, and once I've spent ages perfectly replicating the doors on the original habitat, we're going to have to redesign it to make it so that the hitboxes on the giraffe will actually let them get in here, because they couldn't get through it. The end result, it's a little different to the original, but I'm still really happy with how it looks. I want to experiment with some different colours for this build, which means it's time for Franchise Masters. So in the latest update, there is a new feature called FlexiColor Multi-Select. If you hit I to go into multi-select mode, and then hold down Alt, you can click on any part of a group and it will select every piece that matches that color for you automatically, meaning you can really easily do stuff like this and experiment with the colors on your designs until you're really happy with them, which is such an amazing new feature. Love that. This is looking really cool. Let's get on to the roof. This again is based on the roof in the real building. It doesn't exactly follow the exterior shell of the building. It's like a separate glass piece, which is a lot lower than the top, I'm guessing, to keep heat in, which is obviously more important in Rotterdam than it is in San Bernardino. But we're going to replicate that anyway and use some of these girders to sort of fix it to the walls. I really like these classic glass pieces. I don't get to use them very often. Not really the style that we're going for, but always fun to use them. Let's move on to the doors. I'm going to create, 6 of these to fit into here, although sadly only 2 of them will remain in the build at the end once we've made the adjustments that we need to make to get it to work properly. We'll put some metal on the bottom of the doors to stop the giraffes from destroying the wood, and then we'll move to the inside and do some detailing. And what we're going to do with this building is actually build a proper interior for once. This is all based on the real building, and we're going to put in enclosures for 4 giraffes here where they would spend the night times. We're going to start with 2 giraffes in the habitat, but I'm going to let them breed, and hopefully we'll have 4 of them in here eventually. So just basing this on what I saw in my reference photos, these pens are where they would spend the nights. So we're going to use a mixture of the mesh pieces and some of this corrugated stuff to build that and just make it look like the original. The bright yellow was Rotterdam's design choice, not mine, but I actually think it looks pretty cool. Very industrial looking, and I kind of like that. You can't really see this from outside anyway. You'll see it in the cinematics at the end, but it's not something that's particularly visible when you're outside of the building. So we'll put 4 of these in, put a little latch on for this door here, and then we'll move on and get some of the enrichment items and food and water that we need, and that is the last part of the build. So I'm going to make a little water station here. We'll use 2 of these, get some plaster underneath them, and then we'll put some taps in so the water's got somewhere to come from. These are all usable, so the keepers will fill these and the giraffes will drink from them. And then we'll go outside and put some more enrichment items in as well. And that is the San Bernardino Savannah completed. It's been a long time coming, but I'm really happy that this is all finished. Let's check it out. Here are our giraffes. How amazing does he look leaning over the fence like this? Love that. And I don't care what people say, I think that is a very, very cool building in the background. Very glad I chose that for my reference. Got a bit of a long shot here where you can see this side of the savannah with our zebras as well, and a close-up view of the building here. You can see the redesigned door that I came up with to make sure the giraffes could actually get in there. So let's take a look at them inside. Very happy with this. Let's check out our guests using the feeding platform. Here we go. First guests coming up for the animal talk. There's no way, sadly, to guarantee that the giraffes will come up to the platform at the same time. The educator does throw food, but it's quite a long way away. Obviously, I've got the patience to wait for that to happen. So here you go. Here's a giraffe right next to the feeding point, and now running off into the sunset. I really love this whole savannah area. Let's take a look at the whole thing. This is from the rhino side of it, with the giraffe house in the background. And then we'll zoom out and look at the entire habitat. It is pretty sizable. I think it's about 8,000 square meters all told. Definitely the biggest thing I've ever built. Let's take a look at where we started today and where we are now. Africa is coming along so nicely. I'm going to have to move the drone cam because we're barely going to be able to see the elephants and the big cats at the background. I will see you again next week for something very special, and then the week after that for the next episode of San Bernardino. And we've also filled our members monolith. We have 2 sides to it now. There's the latest member. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.